For decades, the real story of how Haitian officials got pulled into Pablo Escobar's drug empire has been buried in plain sight. But this isn't just another cartel story about cocaine and corruption. It's about how a fragile government, desperate for power and money, became entangled in one of the most dangerous criminal networks in history. In this video, we're going to trace the secret meetings, the money trails, and the political deals that connected Haiti to Escobar's empire. And by the end, you'll see how one decision inside Haiti changed the balance of power in the Caribbean and why its consequences are still felt today. This is Haitianism. Let's take a closer look. It was one day before the scheduled return of Haiti's exiled president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, and already the deadline was collapsing. October 30th, 1993 was supposed to mark the restoration of democratic rule in the Western Hemisphere's poorest nation. Instead, it became clear that the promise would not be kept. Aristide, a Roman Catholic priest elected with nearly 70% of the vote, stood far from home. Inside the United Nations General Assembly, Aristide addressed a packed hall of diplomats. His return had been negotiated, delayed, and nearly derailed. Haiti's military rulers still clung to power, and Aristide chose that moment to speak plainly. In a dramatic move, Aristide told the UN that Haiti's military government had to surrender power. He linked their rule to the explosion of Haiti's role in the international drug trade. Cocaine, he said, flowed through Haiti under military protection. Aristide laid out the scale with precision. Nearly 50 tons of cocaine, he said, passed through Haiti every year. Its street value exceeded $1 billion. From that traffic alone, Haiti's military rulers pocketed roughly $200 million annually. The numbers stunned the room. Those accusations opened a door that could not be closed. In Washington, a Senate subcommittee had already been digging into similar allegations. Massachusetts Senator John Kerry led hearings on international terrorism and drug trafficking. What his investigators found suggested something darker than corruption. The hearings uncovered evidence of collusion between intelligence agencies and drug traffickers during the late 1980s. Kerry's subcommittee traced drug networks tied directly to Haiti's military leadership. One case stood out sharply. It ended in a federal indictment issued in Miami in 1988. The indictment named Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Claude Paul, a powerful figure in Haiti's military. The charge was drug trafficking. For the Haitian army, it was a public humiliation. Paul refused to surrender to U.S. authorities, even as the pressure mounted. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Just 1 month later, U.S. troops invaded Panama. Manuel Noriega, also indicted in Florida on drug charges, was arrested and extradited. Jean-Claude Paul, by contrast, remained untouchable in Haiti. Then, in November 1989, Jean-Paul was found dead. He had consumed a bowl of pumpkin soup, a traditional Haitian meal. Officials accused his wife, claiming she acted after being cheated out of her share of a cocaine deal. The truth, like so much else, dissolved into rumor and fear. Testimony before the U.S. Senate soon widened the circle. Witnesses accused Haiti's Interior Minister, General Williams Regala, of protecting and supervising cocaine shipments. They also named General Henry Namphy, the Army commander, as a recipient of bribes from Colombian traffickers. In exchange, planes were allowed to land freely in the mid-1980s. Haiti's airstrips had become open doors. Another coup followed in 1989, bringing Lieutenant General Prosper Avril to power. Under U.S. pressure, Avril fired 140 officers suspected of drug trafficking. But accusations followed him as well. 6 Haitians later sued Avril, claiming they were abducted and tortured under his orders. 4 years later, as Aristide prepared to return once again, a confidential report leaked to the media. It warned Congress that corruption inside Haiti's military narcotics service was too deep to dismantle Colombian networks. More than 1,000 Colombians were said to be living in Haiti under forged Dominican passports. And despite embargoes and naval blockades, the road to the Dominican border remained wide open. The Kerry report identified Fernando Burgos Martinez as the bagman for Colombia's cocaine cartels. According to the report, he supervised bribes paid directly to Haiti's military leadership. A Miami attorney, John Mattes, described one operation in detail. Martinez allegedly paid $30,000 to Haitian authorities. The money secured the release of 2 drug pilots jailed after their plane was forced to land in Port-au-Prince. Martinez denied every accusation. From his lavish home in Pétionville, he proclaimed his innocence. The neighborhood overlooked the slums of the capital, a reminder of how close power and poverty stood. He also ran the casino at the El Rancho Hotel. Before the embargo, the casino handled nearly $50 million a week. That kind of cash flow raised quiet alarms. Investigators believed it could easily conceal large-scale money laundering. But the most disturbing allegations went beyond casinos and bribes. They pointed instead to Washington, specifically to the role of the CIA. According to testimony, many of Haiti's coup leaders were kept on the CIA payroll. They operated under the cover of an anti-drug intelligence unit created in 1986. Some of those same officers later had their U.S. assets frozen. Others were barred from entering the country because of human rights violations. Those violations included torture and the murder of political opponents. The contradiction was hard to ignore. How could men linked to cocaine trafficking also serve as anti-drug assets? The question spread quietly through Congress. Was Aristide's overthrow a cocaine coup? The question echoed louder after events in Panama. On December 20, 1989, U.S. troops stormed the country to arrest Manuel Noriega. President George Bush called it a victory in the war on drugs. The White House said casualties were minimal. Officials reported 200 Panamanians dead. About 20 American soldiers were killed. Bush declared the cost worth the outcome. Panama, he said, would no longer serve as banker and transit point for Colombian cocaine. But the official numbers did not hold. Lawsuits later alleged a far greater human toll. More than 2,000 civilians may have been killed. Entire neighborhoods were left in ruins. Witnesses described mass graves uncovered after the invasion. Bodies were found in U.S.-made body bags. Some testified they saw troops dumping civilians into trenches. The revelations shocked even longtime observers of U.S. interventions. As the gunfire faded in Panama, another front in the drug war appeared to close. In Haiti, decades of dictatorship seemed to be ending. Jean-Bertrand Aristide was elected president by an overwhelming majority. For millions of Haitians, hope finally felt real. That hope did not last. Less than a year later, on September 30th, 1991, the army struck. Aristide was forced into exile. Haiti plunged back into military repression. Human rights groups soon counted the dead. More than 3,000 Haitians were killed after the coup. Thousands more were wounded or tortured. The OAS imposed an embargo, but the generals held on. Negotiations followed under UN pressure. At Governor's Island in New York, General Raúl Cedras agreed to restore Aristide. In return, the embargo would be lifted. A return date was set. As that date approached, terror spread through the streets. Killings surged in the capital. Antoine Ismery, a key Aristide supporter, was abducted from a cathedral. He was executed in broad daylight. Soon after, Justice Minister Guy Mallory was assassinated. His body was left on a roadside as a warning. President Bill Clinton pledged support for democracy. The USS Harlan County was sent to secure Aristide's return, but at the port, armed mobs loyal to the military gathered. The ship turned back. Images from Somalia still haunted American television screens, and once again, Haiti was left waiting. Meanwhile, the CIA was running an aggressive campaign against Aristide. In October, Senator Jesse Helms brought CIA analyst Brian Littell to Capitol Hill. Littell briefed selected lawmakers on claims that Aristide had been treated for mental illness. The allegation rested on a supposed stay in a Canadian hospital. That period, however, overlapped with Aristide's documented studies and teaching in Israel. Littell also told lawmakers he saw no evidence of oppressive rule in Haiti. The statement landed heavily, given the context. Helms himself had long supported Jean-Claude Duvalier's brutal dictatorship. His sudden concern for Haitian democracy raised quiet eyebrows. The narrative being shaped was clear. But Republicans were not alone in their contradictions. Democrats carried their own ties to Haiti's past rulers. Ron Brown, former Democratic Party chairman and later Secretary of Commerce, once led a law firm representing the Duvalier family. That firm helped frame Duvalier as a Cold War ally. United States support for Duvalier exceeded $400 million in aid. The money flowed while Haitians endured repression under a man who called himself president for life. When Duvalier was finally forced out in 1986, the story did not end cleanly. His departure remains wrapped in secrecy. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North later claimed he had ended Haiti's nightmare. The statement was vague and unexplored. It was never seriously examined during the Iran-Contra hearings. Another loose thread, left hanging. As Helms attacked Aristide in public, the situation inside Haiti worsened. An intelligence service created by the CIA to fight drugs had transformed. The National Intelligence Service, or NIS, became a tool of terror. Its leaders were later sanctioned for backing the coup. From 1986 until the 1991 coup, the CIA poured millions into the NIS. A DEA document described it as a covert counter-narcotics unit working closely with the agency. Yet U.S. officials admitted some members became deeply involved in trafficking. One embassy official bluntly said it distributed drugs inside Haiti. Patrick Ely, Aristide's exiled interior minister, went further. He said the NIS was created by the CIA to infiltrate drug networks. But in practice, he said, its energy went elsewhere. Political repression and surveillance of Haitians became its real mission after the 1991 coup. Ely says the drug trade exploded. Control of the Port Authority fell into military hands. Port-au-Prince Police Chief Michel Francois became a key figure. His armed followers, known as attachés, enforced terror in the streets. U.S. sources later admitted the NIS provided little real drug intelligence. Its commanders were instead linked to torture and murder. Death threats even forced the local DEA chief to flee Haiti. The system was feeding on itself. Senator Christopher Dodd captured the contradiction in plain words. He said U.S. intelligence was coming from the same men killing civilians in public. The statement hung in the air. It was an admission without resolution. Before the mid-1980s, Haiti's drug trade was fragmented. Individual officers skimmed profits under Duvalier's rule. Then the cocaine boom changed everything. Cartels needed new routes. Haiti was perfectly placed. Just south of the Bahamas, it sat astride major smuggling paths. The Windward Passage became a highway in the sky and sea. Geography did the rest. Former DEA Chief Thomas Cash spelled it out. Dozens of airstrips, no radar, and minimal patrols made Haiti wide open. Combined with entrenched corruption, it became irresistible. In his words, Haiti was fertile ground. Drug trafficker George Morales was blunt when he spoke to Senator Kerry. In the mid-1980s, he said, Haiti was little more than a parking lot for his planes. Aircraft would sit on the island, repaired and refueled. When asked if drugs moved through Haiti, Morales did not hesitate. He said yes, and added that it was common. Over time, Haiti's role in the cocaine trade only expanded. Profits soared for the officials who protected it. That reality helps explain why Aristide struggled to stop shipments during his brief time in power. The system was already entrenched, and anyone who challenged it paid a price. A confidential DEA report sent to Congressman John Conyers detailed one such case. Tony Greco, a former DEA agent in Haiti, fled the country in September 1992. His flight followed the arrest of a Haitian military officer accused of drug running. What happened next made his position impossible. Patrick Ely says the Haitian military offered no help at all in drug interdiction. In May 1991, Greco received intelligence that 400 kilos of cocaine were arriving. He watched as the shipment came in by boat. The military, fully aware, never showed up. Greco later said the absence was deliberate. He described it as conspicuous. Soon after, a phone call came. A man claiming to be the boss of the arrested officer threatened Greco's family. Only 2 men had Greco's private number. Army Commander Raoul Cedras was one. Port-au-Prince Police Chief Michel Francois was the other. Both would later lead the 1991 coup. Greco packed up and ran. Despite cases like Greco's, the DEA defended its presence in Haiti. 2 agents remained stationed there. Contacts with the military continued after Aristide's overthrow. All of this continued even as more than 26,000 pounds of cocaine entered the United States through Haiti in 1993. Agency spokesperson William Rosamenti insisted cooperation was productive. He said the DEA received reliable support. Reports of Army involvement in trafficking existed, he admitted. But he said they were unverified. The State Department's own report added to the confusion. Released in April, it claimed drug activity in Haiti was low. On corruption, it said no direct evidence linked senior officials to trafficking. Rumors, it said, were unsubstantiated. Congressman Major Owens rejected that conclusion. He called the inaction a question the government refused to answer. Owens accused Secretary of State Warren Christopher of applying a double standard. In his view, racism shaped policy toward Haiti. Inside Haiti, belief ran deep that Michel Francois ran the drug trade. Along with his brother Evans, he built power through violence. Hundreds of armed auxiliaries, known as attachés, enforced his rule. Rivals disappeared or were eliminated. Francois operated his own intelligence service. It spied on enemies and allies alike. At the same time, it protected traffickers. Human rights lawyers said Francois and former dictator Prosper Avril were the real power behind General Cedras. The violence was not hidden. Francois's men were linked to torture and death squad killings. At City Hall, attachés blocked Mayor Evans Paul from entering his office. Shots were fired, leaving 1 dead and 11 wounded. Witnesses described attachés dragging aides from a car. Beatings followed in the open street. Francois was also blamed for the murder. Journalist Dennis Bernstein added one final detail. Michel Francois had been trained at the U.S. Army School of the Americas. In Latin America, it was known by another name. The School of Coup. Over 4 decades, the School of the Americas trained more than 55,000 military personnel from Latin America. Among them were figures later tied to death squads and political terror. The institution's reach extended far beyond classrooms. Its graduates appeared again and again in moments of violence. Haiti would not be an exception. On April 20, 1994, a new accusation landed in Washington. Gabriel Taboada, a convicted Colombian drug trafficker serving a sentence in Miami, testified before a Senate subcommittee chaired by John Kerry. From prison, he named Michel Francois. He said Francois helped ship tons of cocaine to the United States during the 1980s. Taboada traced their meeting back to Medellin in 1984. He said he encountered Francois inside the office of Pablo Escobar. During a brief conversation, Taboada claimed he posed as a car importer. Francois, he said, laughed and asked why he was not in drugs instead. Speaking through an interpreter, Taboada recalled asking Francois about his work. Francois replied that he was in Medellin arranging a cocaine deal. Only later did Taboada realize who he had been speaking to. The man negotiating in Escobar's city was Haiti's future police chief. Taboada told senators the operation was systematic. Planes left Colombia and landed in Haiti under military protection. Francois, he said, secured the drugs on Haitian soil. Once cleared, the shipments moved onward to the United States. The testimony did not stop with one name. Taboada said Haitian military figures frequently met Medellin cartel leaders in Colombia. Among them was Prosper Avril. Together, Avril and Francois formed a familiar pattern. Haiti, once again, sat at the center of someone else's drug empire. In the end, the coup that removed Aristide from power cannot be understood only through the language of ideology or democracy. Beneath the speeches and diplomatic statements lay a darker economy shaping decisions in the shadows. Powerful interests tied to the drug trade had too much at stake in who controlled the state, the ports, and the routes that moved billions through the Caribbean. When the government shifted, the consequences were immediate and devastating. Nearly 5,000 lives lost in political violence, an international embargo that crushed roughly 20% of Haiti's GDP, and the eventual dismantling of the Haitian army, an institution that had long defined the country's balance of power. Decades later, the vacuum left behind. The economic scars and the security instability still echo from that moment, reminding us that when criminal economies intertwine with fragile politics, nations pay the price long after the headlines fade.